The sea breathed against the cliffs like a slow remembering. Elias Thorne stepped from the carriage and felt the mist touch his face, soft as unspoken music. The mansion waited above, its windows flickering faintly with the glow of a single lamp, as though someone had been expecting him. Inside, dust moved in slow spirals, where moonlight wandered through broken panes. Then came the sound, one low, trembling note from the piano down the hall. Elias froze. Another note followed, gentle, deliberate, mournful. He whispered to himself that it must be the wind. Yet, the melody continued, shaping itself into something fragile and human. When the final note fell into silence, it seemed to breathe a name he almost recognized. What if time remembered what we tried to forget? The next morning came gray and salt-stained. Elias found the piano untouched, though the keys bore traces of his own fingerprints, and one he did not remember leaving. The air in the room smelled faintly of lilac, impossible for winter. He opened the windows to let the light in, and the sea wind carried a sound he could almost mistake for a hum. In the quiet, he remembered why he'd come. To care for this place, yes, but also to escape the silence of another home where music had once lived. As he touched the keys again, a shiver passed through him. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, the echo of last night's melody still breathed. Later, while unpacking in the servants' quarters, Elias discovered an old logbook left by the previous caretaker. The final entry, written in faded ink, read only, "The piano knows." He traced the words with his finger, feeling a pulse behind them. That night he walked the corridors again, the lantern dimming as the tide pulled closer to the cliffs. From somewhere deep in the house came a single, almost hesitant chord, like a question asked by someone long forgotten. Elias whispered into the darkness, "What do you remember?" And for a moment, the house seemed to breathe in reply. By the third night, the piano began playing at the same time. Midnight, precise and patient. The melody wove through the corridors like a whispering tide, each note climbing towards something sorrowful. Elias stood in the doorway, unable to move. The keys struck themselves with eerie grace, ivory gleaming like teeth in candlelight. The final note lingered longer than before, bending softly, forming the sound of a name. Mara. The syllable hung in the air, tender and aching. He didn't know the name, yet tears welled unbidden in his eyes. The next day, Elias walked into the nearby village, a place where faces watched from behind curtains. He asked about the mansion, about anyone named Mara. The shopkeeper froze mid-motion, the knife in her hand hovering above the bread. "We don't say that name," she whispered. She was the last one before the piano went quiet. Years ago, the words followed him back through the fog, colder than the sea wind. As night fell once more, the house waited for him, patient as memory. He stood by the piano and whispered, "Play." Somewhere within, the hammers stirred. The following night, Elias left every candle burning. He waited by the piano as the clock crept toward midnight. When the first note sounded, it was softer than a breath, rising like mist over water. But tonight, another sound joined it. A woman's voice, faint and harmonic, weaving through the melody. Elias turned, and there she was, Clara Vale, the historian who had written him weeks ago about the mansion. "You heard it too," she whispered. Her gaze met his, full of awe and dread. The piano played on, its song growing clearer, more human. The final note fell like a tear, echoing through the rafters. This time it whispered another name. Jonas. Clara spoke little as she unpacked her notebooks and phonograph. She had studied the legends of the Vale House piano for years, but never believed them, until now. Together, they replayed the recording she'd captured. The notes were flawless, yet when slowed, a second tone appeared beneath the melody. A whisper repeating, "Jonas, Jonas." Elias felt the name crawl across his skin. "Was there a Jonas in the village?" Clara asked. He nodded slowly. "A boy lost to the sea." he murmured. Almost 20 winters ago. Outside, the waves beat against the cliffs like a slow, relentless metronome. At dawn, Clara wandered the beach beneath the cliffs, tracing the tide line where broken shells whispered against her boots. She hummed the tune softly, testing its intervals. Behind her, the mansion loomed, pale against the horizon. The sea seemed to answer her with its own rhythm, low, sorrowful, endless. She turned as Elias approached, his coat flapping in the wind. "It's not just a song," she said. "It's a language," he frowned, glancing toward the restless ocean. "Then who is it speaking to?" Clara smiled faintly. "Maybe to whoever still listens?" That evening they studied the piano together. Inside the lid, Clara found faint carvings along the wood grain, tiny marks that followed the flow of the melody. "These aren't scratches," she whispered. "They're notes." As her fingers traced the grooves, the air thickened, carrying a faint scent of salt and decay. The piano responded with a single tone, low and trembling, though neither had touched a key. Elias drew back. "It's aware of us," he said softly. Clara met his eyes. "No," she replied, voice trembling. "It's remembering." Near midnight, the piano began again, louder than before, the melody weaving faster, desperate. Elias and Clara stood side by side, hearts hammering as names formed in the rhythm. Mara, Jonas, Ellen, Ruth. The final chord struck like thunder, shaking the windows. Then silence. In that stillness, Clara's hand found Elias. "It's calling them back," she whispered, but Elias wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the reflection in the piano lid. For an instant, he saw a dozen figures standing behind them, translucent, watching, waiting for their names to be played again. Elias could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the melody replayed, shaping into syllables that refused to fade. By morning, he found Clara in the library surrounded by stacks of dusty hymnals. "Each name corresponds to a note," she said, pointing to her scribbled charts. "The piano is spelling them through music." Elias ran a hand through his hair, disbelief battling wonder. "But why their names?" he asked. Clara's eyes softened. "Because someone wanted them remembered." A chill moved through the air as a faint hum trembled from the parlor below. The piano was already awake. They followed the sound to the piano room. The melody this time was slower, deliberate, almost pleading. Clara listened carefully, jotting down each sequence. When the final note hung in the air, she whispered, "I know that name." Her voice broke as she read the letters formed by the musical scale. "Ellen Val." Elias looked at her sharply. "Your family?" Clara nodded, tears shining in the candlelight. "My grandmother's sister. She vanished here before I was born." The piano responded with a single echoing note, as if acknowledging her grief. Later that day, they walked through the village again. People avoided their gaze. Doors closed quietly as they passed. Elias stopped before a notice board, its surface warped with rain. Pinned among the fading posters was a missing person notice. Ellen Vale, 1912. Clara traced the paper, her hand trembling. "It's like the house remembers them for the world," she whispered. Elias nodded. "But what happens when it finishes the song?" The question hung heavy between them, unanswered, as a distant gull screamed above the cliffs. Back in the mansion, Elias found himself staring at the piano's reflection. The surface seemed to ripple as if water moved beneath the lacquer. He leaned closer and saw his own face dissolve into another's. A man with hollow eyes and a cracked smile. The image vanished with a blink. Heart racing, Elias struck a key in defiance. The piano answered instantly, forming a series of trembling notes that Clara translated into a single word. "Elias." He froze. "It knows me now," he said quietly. Clara reached for his hand. "Then it's already chosen you." That night, Elias could not bear to stay indoors. He climbed the cliff path, the wind tearing through his coat. Below, the mansion glowed faintly like a shipwreck lantern beneath the mist. He thought of all the names, of Clara's trembling voice, of the music that remembered what the living had forgotten. "If the piano remembers them," he murmured. "Who remembers me?" The waves answered in rhythm, slow and unending. Far below, through an open window, the piano began again, softly, almost tenderly, calling his name with every note. The next morning broke pale and silent. Clara found Elias already in the library, staring at a spread of old letters had unearthed from a locked drawer. The paper was brittle, stained with salt, the handwriting elegant yet trembling. "They belonged to the original composer," he said softly. "Samuel Vale." Clara froze. Her family name. Together they read by the gray light. "Each soul I could not save from the sea, I shall carve into sound, that they may live again through music." The room felt colder, Clara whispered. "He built the piano from the wrecked ships that took them." Elias's voice trembled. "Then every note is a memory of the drowned." They descended into the cellar where the scent of sea and rot grew strong. Water pooled in corners, and along the stone walls hung wooden planks carved with faint music symbols. Clara ran her hand over one and gasped. "Ship timbers," she murmured, each piece marked with a name. Elias raised his lantern higher. The carvings stretched on endlessly, names upon names, notes upon notes, as if the entire house were built to sing. A low hum trembled beneath their feet, deep and alive. Clara stepped back. "It's still remembering," she whispered. "And it's not finished." That evening the mansion shook with the rising wind. Elias and Clara sat beside the piano, the letters spread like offerings before it. Clara whispered. "He wasn't trying to haunt them. He was trying to save them." Elias nodded slowly, but something went wrong. The first note rang out, sharp and mournful, followed by another and another. This time, Elias recognized fragments of voices within the sound. Pleas, laughter, weeping. The music filled the house like a tide. Clara covered her ears, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They're trapped in the melody," she cried. Elias whispered, "And we're next." When the music finally stopped, the mansion exhaled, a long, hollow silence. In the faint glow, Clara noticed something etched on the inside of the piano lid, a message scrawled beneath the varnish. To be remembered, one must first be lost. Elias traced the words with his trembling hand. "He sacrificed himself," he whispered. Samuel Vale became the last note. Clara turned to him, realization dawning like dread. "Then the piano isn't haunted. It's hungry. It feeds on remembrance." A gust of wind slammed the shutters, and the keys struck one sharp, solitary note. As if in agreement, outside, thunder rolled across the sea. The storm howled through the broken windows, yet the piano remained untouched, patient, waiting. Clara stood at the doorway, hair whipping wildly, her voice steady despite the chaos. If the piano remembers through song, then maybe silence can free them. Elias turned toward her, understanding dawning. He stepped closer, placing his hands over hers. "Then we end the melody," he whispered. Lightning flashed, flooding the room in white. Somewhere deep within the piano, a faint heartbeat of sound answered, slow and inevitable, as if it already knew their plan. The storm lasted through the night, tearing at the cliffs and shaking the mansion's bones. Elias and Clara did not sleep. When the thunder faded, the silence felt heavier than the storm itself. They returned to the parlor at dawn, where sea mist pooled along the floor like breath. The piano waited, its keys glistening wet. Elias whispered, "If we end its song, we end its memory." Clara nodded, her voice barely a sound. "Then we must not listen when it begins." But as the first key trembled, Elias's eyes glazed over, drawn helplessly toward the sound. The melody rose again, threading itself through his pulse until his heartbeat moved in time with every note. By midday, Elias had not spoken. He sat at the piano, hands poised above the keys, motionless yet trembling. Clara watched from across the room, afraid to break the spell. Then, without warning, his fingers moved. The sound was different, slower, deeper, mournful, as though the piano itself breathed through him. The melody twisted and bent, forming words that were not his. Clara cried out, "Elias, stop!" But his voice came from somewhere else, layered and distant. "They are not gone. They are waiting beneath the song." Every note seemed to pull at the walls, bending light and air. The house itself began to hum. "Mercy!" Clara rushed forward, trying to pull him away, but the air between them thickened like water. Every note seemed alive, pushing her back. "Elias!" she screamed. His head turned slowly toward her, eyes dark as the sea. And for a moment another face flickered behind his, Samuel Vale's. His mouth moved. But the voice that emerged was not his own. "Remember me." Then, with a violent crash, the lid of the piano slammed shut, and Elias collapsed, gasping. The melody stopped, but the silence that followed felt alive, pulsing, whispering in their ears. Clara fell to her knees beside him, trembling. "It's inside you now," she whispered. When Elias awoke, night had returned. The piano was quiet again, though faint vibrations pulsed through the air like a heartbeat. Clara sat near him, exhausted but watchful. "You were speaking in two voices," she murmured. Elias rubbed his temples. "I saw them, all of them. The drowned, the lost. They're trapped in the sound." Clara's eyes shone with both fear and compassion. "Then we must silence it before it finishes your name." But even as she spoke, Elias felt something deep inside him answer. A low, resonant hum that matched the rhythm of the sea beyond the cliffs. Later, while Clara slept, Elias returned to the piano. The house was still, the sea, a dark mirror beyond the windows. He lifted the lid slowly, reverently. Inside, beneath the strings, something gleamed. A tiny brass plate engraved with names. His name was the last one, half-etched, incomplete. His breath caught. "It was always meant to end with me," he whispered. The piano responded with a soft single note, tender and final, like a sigh. In that moment, Elias understood. The piano did not steal lives. It collected them. He placed his hand on the keys, and the house began to sing again, welcoming him home. At sunrise, Clara awoke to quiet so heavy it felt alive. The piano stood open, but Elias was gone. Only his coat remained, draped neatly across the bench. Panic tightened her chest as she searched the mansion, calling his name through empty halls. No echo answered, not even the sea. When she returned to the parlor, the keys trembled faintly, pressing down one by one without sound. The air felt dense, like the moment before, a storm. Clara stepped closer, whispering, "Elias, if you are here, stop." But the piano continued its soundless song, each movement slower, sadder, like breath fading from a body that refused to rest. She searched the cliffs, the cellar, the echoing halls, but Elias was nowhere. Returning to the piano, Clara noticed something new. The brass nameplate beneath the strings now bore a second inscription, Clara Vale. Her breath hitched, and her hands shook as she tried to pry it free. "No," she whispered. "Not me." The air trembled, faintly humming in reply. Then, for the first time, the piano spoke without music. A single whisper carried by the sea wind. "Remember me." The sound was both Elias and the piano's, overlapping like two souls caught in one voice. Tears filled her eyes. "I will," she said. "But I will end this." She fetched kerosene from the cellar, the bottle cold in her shaking hands. The house groaned around her, timbers whispering like voices beneath the floor. In the parlor, she poured the liquid across the piano's frame, its scent sharp in the air. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "You were meant for music, not mourning." The piano's keys pressed one final time, forming a soundless chord that felt like forgiveness. Clara struck a match. For an instant, the flame flickered blue, then leapt high, swallowing the piano in fire. The sound that rose was not a scream, but a sigh of release, long and weary. The fire spread fast. Clara ran through the corridors, light and shadow clashing like memory and forgetting. The portraits on the wall seemed to smile as they burned, their faces softening into peace. Outside, rain began to fall, hissing against the flames. She turned one last time toward the mansion, watching as the roof collapsed inward. The sound that followed was low, resonant, and strangely gentle. The final chord of a song centuries in the making. The sea wind caught the embers, carrying them out over the cliffs until they vanished into the gray. When dawn came again, the mansion was gone. Only the piano's iron frame remained among the ashes, still warm, still humming faintly. Clara stood before it, exhausted, her clothes soaked through. She waited for silence, but it never came. The low hum continued, steady, eternal. She knelt, pressing her ear to the frame. The sound was not the sea, nor the wind. It was a heartbeat, one that matched her own. A faint smile touched her lips as she whispered, "Then you remember me too?" The morning sun broke through the clouds, and for a moment the ruins glowed as if alive. Days passed and the sea quieted. Clara remained by the ruins, unable to leave. The village whispered her name now, the woman who burned the haunted house. But at night, when the tide crept close, she still heard it. A faint melody rising from beneath the cliffs, each note soft, sorrowful, familiar. She followed the sound one evening, lantern trembling in her hand. Below the cliff, among tide pools and broken stone, she found something glimmering. The piano's keys, scattered like teeth across the shore. When she touched one, it pulsed warm against her skin. The sea breeze carried a voice, Elias's voice. "Not gone," remembered. Her tears mingled with the rain. She gathered the keys and carried them home to the village. Laying them out across her small table, she arranged them in silence. Each one bore a faint etching. A letter, a name. When placed together, the sequence spelled a single word. Home. Clara traced the word, her heart heavy but full. The wind pushed through her open window, and she could almost swear she heard footsteps beyond the door. She turned, half smiling, half afraid. Elias, only the soft rustle of paper replied. But her heart quickened, and the air felt warmer, as if he had truly answered. That night, the village fell into deep, unbroken sleep. But Clara stayed awake, the piano keys spread before her like relics. Slowly, she began to hum the same melody that had haunted the mansion. Her voice was quiet, uncertain at first, then stronger. The air shimmered faintly, and the ivory keys vibrated in harmony. One by one, they lifted, floating into the air, spinning like fireflies before settling gently back onto the table. The final tone lingered longer than the rest, low and tender. In that moment, she felt him, Elias, standing beside her, silent but present. And for the first time, the music sounded like forgiveness. By dawn, Clara knew what she must do. She walked to the edge of the sea, carrying the keys wrapped in cloth. The horizon shimmered like molten silver. Kneeling by the tide, she whispered each name she remembered. Mara, Jonas, Ellen, Ruth, and finally, Elias. With every name, she released a key into the water. Each one sank softly, leaving a ring of light that spread across the waves. When the last key slipped beneath, the sea grew still, the morning air filled with faint notes. Thousands of voices, gentle and free. The piano's song was over, and every lost soul was finally home. That evening, the villagers heard music on the wind, soft, wordless, drifting through the mist. Some said it came from the cliffs, others from the sea itself. But Clara knew it was neither. It came from within, the memory of all that had been lost, carried now by silence. She sat by her window, eyes half closed, smiling as the sound faded into calm. Then the world grew utterly still. For the first time there was peace, and in that fragile hush just before sleep took her, she heard one last whisper. Gentle, distant, loving. "Thank you." The silence that followed was complete, and it was beautiful.